It's time for the Leadership Lunch Break with Joy Jackson of Speaking of Joy. Let's tune in for today's discussion.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Leadership Lunch Break. Can you believe it? It's episode 34. And hey, we're almost through August. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. This is going to be a very transparent conversation. I'm going to share some things with you. One of the things that I struggle with is rejection. And I'm going to tell you more about it. I'm going to tell you about my struggles, encourage you to identify ways that you struggle in rejection as well. And I want to thank all of my friends who have challenged me in this area each and every day. And as I was thinking about a topic, I thought about leading through rejection. And here's why. Because we all call ourselves leaders. You know how I feel about leadership. It has absolutely nothing to do with the traditional sense of a title or a position. But all of us as leaders in any capacity have at some point in our lives, I believe, dealt with rejection. And rejection doesn't have to mean complete failure or mistake making, but rejection is really when you expect things or people to go your way and they don't. How do you handle that? How do you manage that? And that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to share some stories with you, my Speaking of Joy journey, relationship things, experience, just so that we can all navigate this journey of rejection together. So when you think about rejection, you know, it's normal to want to be accepted. Now, I know people will argue that point all day, but I will tell you that it is absolutely normal for you to want to be accepted because we are a culture of acceptance. How do you know? You can look at social media. You can look at how many of us are trying or doing things to get likes or on social media or to get more hand claps or more posts. So, and if you're a social media person, they will tell you basically sometimes that your worth or your value is in what you're getting, the likes, the posts, the comments, the shares, the consistency, all of those things are what people will tell you are necessary. So it's easy to see that acceptance is something that we all want, something that we all in our lives, I believe, struggle with or are challenged with. And it's okay. It's okay to want to be accepted. It's okay to want to be liked because that's just a part of our human nature. That's a part of our anatomy. And it's about connectedness. So a lot of times I think when we talk about rejection, we're looking at rejection from different vantage points when really it's about connectedness. And who doesn't want to be connected to people, connected to your job, connected to your family, connected to the world? I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges in COVID was that we were no longer connected and we felt isolated. And one of the things that rejection will do is it will cause you to feel like you're isolated. It will cause you to feel like you are in it all by yourself. And thank you so much. Clarine said, I agree. We naturally seek acceptance and we do. We naturally seek it. It's not uncommon or a bad thing to say, you know what? I do want people to appreciate me. I do want people to like me. I don't want to feel like I'm doing this by myself. And so the first thing about rejection, a lot of times, is it will make you feel isolated. You feel like you're the only one going through it. You feel like you're the only one dealing with it. And so as a result, you find yourself in some behaviors that you may not necessarily like. So when you are a person who struggles with just trying to be accepted or you battle with rejection, then when you do that, you will find in so many ways that you start to manifest some behaviors that aren't behaviors you really want to demonstrate, but you demonstrate them because you want to be accepted or because you have a fear of rejection. So let me level set this right now and say, okay, if you have a fear of rejection, you're not alone. Let's be clear. If you feel that you've had rejection issues, you're not alone. It's normal. It's natural for us to feel in rejection. And honestly, if you've ever applied for a job and didn't get it, that was rejection. Now, you may have brushed yourself off and I didn't want that job anyway, but in reality, that's a level and a form of rejection. If you are a person who's been in a situation in a relationship that didn't work out, that's a rejection, and that can hurt as well. That's right. Carlotta Colquitt said, rejection hurts. It does. It hurts. But how do you deal with rejection in such a way that it no longer stifles you for the rest of your life, or it doesn't stifle you in any more relationships, or it doesn't doesn't stifle you in your growth anymore. And that's what I want to share. So I'll tell you my transparent stories about rejection. Listen, I'm an only child. Okay. As an only child, we tend to, I won't say we, I tend to want to accommodate and want people to like me. I want people to like me. I want people to feel like I add value to their lives. And over time, even in my job search, I've been pretty successful at having those moments. And I'm not doing that to boast or to tout who I am, but I've been pretty good at accomplishing things. So I also say that I'm a very savvy risk taker because I only take risks that I know I'll be successful at. Now, that is not a good practice to have, but that's how I operate. A lot of times I'll only do things that I really feel like I'll be good at. So I have such an issue with rejection that I won't even do anything. And I won't be able to succeed. And so, hey, Brittany said, hey, I was calling you and thought, oh, she's doing a leadership lunch break. I am. Thank you so much for joining. And we are talking about rejection. So I am the type of person that I will not do a lot of work if I feel like it's not going to be productive and I'm not going to be successful. So I'm a very sophisticated risk taker is what I'll say. I only do risks that I know I'll be successful, which is a really good thing because now when you look at my resume or my abilities, I look like I've done a whole lot. But the truth is all I've done is try to protect myself from actually being hurt or from rejection. And when you do that, that will really, really, really cause you some pain. So let me tell you some ways that some coping strategies that people use for rejection. So one is people pleasing. Listen, if I don't want people to reject me, I'll just say yes. How many of us have done that? So we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, there are things we don't want to do. There are places we don't want to go. There are relationships or jobs that we don't want. There are opportunities that we don't want. But because we don't want to say no or to feel like people will no longer approve of us, we find ourselves people pleasing. Another one is unassertiveness. That means I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to take a chance. I'm not going to take a step out. I'm not going to insert myself because what if I speak up for myself? And when I speak up for myself, I realize at that point that somebody may not agree with me. So I find myself being less assertive. So I just kind of let people make decisions. Some of us, I used to do this. I would sit in meetings and I knew I had a great idea. I knew I had some things that I could contribute, but I never really said anything because what if I said it and the people were like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, she's new to the organization, and they would reject me. So I didn't want, thank you, Clarine says, sophisticated risk taker. Listen, we've got all these clever names for things that really we need to work on, but that's mine. So yes, I wasn't as assertive as I needed to be. Another one is passive aggressive behavior. How many of us know some passive aggressive or we're passive aggressive people? So we're not comfortable with our real selves. So we're going to find a way to express our needs backwards or in a way where we really want you to understand us or to hear us. But because we're afraid of what your response might be, and it may be rejection, we find ourselves trying to express our needs inadvertently. So I'll complain about something or I'll say, man, I wish I had this. Or man, I wish I could do, or it sure would be nice if. That, friends, is really a way that we cope with the fear of rejection. So we're not really going to actually state our intentions or state what we desire. We find ways to work around it. One that I absolutely don't care for, and if you follow me, you know this, is inauthenticity, being inauthentic. So many times, especially in the business world, especially, I know it was my struggle, was showing up as Joy every day. Listen, I could say I'm Joy. I could love myself. I could walk into the room and hear Shaka Khan, I'm Every Woman playing. But it was something about walking into certain situations where I felt that people who would see me would reject me. So I was no longer in the space where I felt comfortable. So I started to adjust. I started to make concessions. I started not to speak up boldly about what I believed. And it wasn't that I didn't have those thoughts. It was just that I wasn't being my authentic self. Hey, Hannah, thank you for tuning in from the UK. Let me tell you, one of the things that I promote now, and I live in 100% truth, is that I need to be authentic. And I have to realize that in my authenticity, it may not work for everyone. And let me tell you, okay, so let me tell you, that's been a hard lesson for me. Okay, remember I told you we're going to air some dirty laundry today. One of my friends says confession is good for the soul, but bad for the reputation. So here we go. As a coach, if you know coaches, you know that the way most coaches make a living or speakers make a living is through bookings or through relationships or through having those connections and people signing on or people really agreeing to work with you. Let me tell you, it has been an eye-opening experience to realize that I'm not for everyone, because I look at myself like, oh my gosh, I am good at what I do. I have a lot to offer. I can transform lives, all of that, but I'm just not some people's cup of tea. And that has been a struggle for me to accept, because I had to realize that they weren't necessarily rejecting me. Because of course it's easy to make rejection very personal in the business world. You don't get a job, that means they didn't like you. You didn't get the promotion, that means they didn't like you. You don't get the opportunity to speak, that means that there's a personal issue with you. When in actuality, they're not rejecting you. It just may be the idea. It may not be the right time. So even as a coach, I've had to accept the fact that no, not everybody's going to want to work with me. But I'm confident in the ones who do want to work with me are the people who desire what I bring to the table. And although that seems very easy and it's like, Joy, you should have known that from the beginning. Let me tell you, that was one of the biggest struggles that I've had, because again, I've been somebody who's been successful. So people like me. So when you don't like me, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because you have to like me. This is all that the conversations that I continue to have in my head. So a lot of times when we feel that we may be rejected as ourselves, we become other people. We don't look like we should. We don't talk like we should. I'll say this: we show on social media something totally different than who we are, because we are afraid that people won't really, really like us. So I've shown up inauthentic. I've shown up inauthentic in a lot of ways. I've shown up inauthentic on my job. I've shown up inauthentic in relationships. I've shown up inauthentic even in some situations when I do this. There's sometimes I come on, and before I start, I have to check myself and say, okay, Joy, listen, we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. We're going to experience what we're going to experience. We're going to share what we're going to share. And those who will watch, and hopefully they'll be blessed. Those it doesn't resonate with, that's okay too. So I have that self-talk every single day, believe it or not. And then the last thing that people do when they are struggling with rejection is they distance themselves. I mean, isn't that a clever way to do it? Listen, if I'm not around people or around situations, guess what? I can't be rejected. And some people have that mentality. They believe I'm a loner. I like to be by myself. Well, part of why you might want to be by yourself is because you feel that if you are with other people, then you may find yourself in those other situations. But you also may find that if you open yourself up and become, what's the word? Vulnerable, that you open yourself up to rejection. And it's okay. Clarine said, I'm loving the real talk. Learning that everyone isn't meant to be my client was a process for me as well. But that's it. But when you learned it, it was liberating. Absolutely, Clarine. When you realize, and not just even in coaching, I'll say in a job, let me tell you, the best thing you can do is apply for jobs and realize that the jobs that you didn't get weren't meant for you. Nothing to do with you, but that job wasn't meant for you. And there is a place that you are supposed to be. That position is really waiting for you. So all the rejections, all the no's are okay, because there is a place waiting for you. And when you really change your mindset and start to think about that, you process differently and you find yourself more comfortable in hearing the no's. Listen, no is not a word we like to hear. We think it's cute with children. Babies learn the first word they learn is no. We think it's really cute. But as adults, we're not conditioned to hear no. We like to hear yes. I work with a guy, Kendrick, and it's so funny. Kendrick and he says he has a yes day. He says he has a day where he says yes all day. So he challenged me on one of my leadership lunch breaks to have a yes day. And I did it. And it was actually freeing and liberating, because for that day, which nobody knew was a yes day, because I still didn't want people to take advantage of me, but yes day was an opportunity for me to say yes to things I would ordinarily say no to. And although for him, it's a practice that he does regularly, for me, it was something very different. And I'll tell you why. because sometimes I say no because I don't want to be rejected. Speaking of joy, I have been wanting to be a speaker, a coach, a facilitator my whole life. My mom will tell you that this has been my dream. I've traveled the country, traveled the world speaking. I've done all of that, but I was so afraid to do it for myself. And it wasn't because I didn't feel I had the skills or the education or the exposure, the connections or the opportunities. It was truly because I was afraid of people not liking what I put before them. So yeah, I have a fear of failure. Well, I'll be honest. Yes, I struggle with the fear of failure. Yes, I struggle with the fear of making mistakes. But more importantly, I struggle with the fear of being told you're not good enough, or we don't like you, or this is not what we're looking for. So the fear of rejection has paralyzed me for almost 20 years in this career. So let me make the announcement now. I am working on that because I choose how I show up, and I choose at this point in my life to not be bound anymore or restricted by the fear of rejection, because rejection is something that will bind you and keep you. And I'll say this to those of you who struggle with that. If this is something that you deal with, let me tell you what's happening. Right now, what's happening, because you're afraid to take that next step. There are people, there are processes, there are situations, there are opportunities that will not happen until you get to the point where you're comfortable walking in your purpose. That's just the truth. And what I had to come to terms with in my own life, in my own head, was, hey, Joy, listen, at the end of the day, there is something special for you to do. And as long as you can be bound and restricted by the enemy in a situation where you don't feel comfortable that you can do it, you are missing the opportunity to touch lives. You are missing the opportunity to change a home. You are missing the opportunity for that new job. Because speaking of joy, is my job now. Who would have thought that had I never ever gotten to the point? And I'll tell you, you know the story. I was let go. I wasn't out here looking for the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. I will tell anybody in a heartbeat, this was never what I wanted to do, which is pause, kind of an oxymoron, right? Because I'm saying I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but I wanted to be a professional speaker, which in some regard is entrepreneurial. But what I realized was, for me, it was a push out the door for me to even be in this space. But it took me months to start speaking of joy, because I kept telling myself, what if? What if it doesn't work? What if people don't like it? What if people don't like you? What if you don't get any clients? What if people don't follow you? What if you don't get enough likes on social media? What if you don't have a clue what you're doing? What if you wait? I mean, I could go on and on about all of the challenges and what ifs that I continue to allow myself to have. But let me tell you this. Very seldom did I ever say, what if it works? What if it actually happens? What if people do gravitate to it? What if it does change a life? What if it does help somebody? So I had to accept the fact that for all the negative things that I was putting out into the atmosphere and spending my energy on, that rejection probably would happen, because it's going to happen no matter what. But there were so many positives that outweighed that moment of rejection. I look at relationships. I am married, been married to my husband for 12 years. I am so grateful for him and the love that he shares and shows me. But I've had my heart broken. And I had to realize that even in relationships, my heart's been broken by friends, by boyfriends, by whomever. But at the end of the day, I had to be willing to continue, because I never would have met Stephen if I sat in the rejection. So it's okay that things happen. It's okay that things don't always work out for our good, because in the end, at the end of it, the rejection is really for a purpose. That is the most profound thing that I am learning in this season of dealing with rejection. And I'll tell you, I literally walk this every day. It is not something that I'm telling you because I don't walk it. I walk it every day. And sometimes I have to pause and say to myself, okay, Joy, what is it about you and your fear of rejection in this moment that is causing you to choose this decision? because rejection will have you making decisions in a different way. Rejection will have you speaking in a different way. Rejection will have you on a job that you no longer want to be on because you're afraid to apply for a new job. Rejection will have you isolated and alone. Rejection is a huge tool that binds us in a way that if we're not aware of it, we can't be released. So let me tell you some ideas and some thoughts on how you can release rejection. So I hope this is helping everybody. These are the things that I'm walking through every single day. The first one is rejection happens to everyone. That's very simple, but it's so very true. Rejection happens to everyone. I don't know anyone in the world who has never been told no. But it's how we process that no that makes all the difference. So for some of us, when we hear the word no or we feel rejected, do we retreat? Do we get to a place where we say, you know what, I'll never do this again. I'll never take this step again. I'll never try again because it didn't work out the first time. I will tell you, if that's how you respond, then you are missing out on life. Because there are so many opportunities out there on the other side of that no. Once you process that rejection, once you understand that rejection is really just a pause, and sometimes it's a blessing. Sometimes rejection is a blessing. In other words, if I'm a leader and I recognize that I'm moving into leadership, down a path of leadership, when I get to a point where I recognize that even through my leadership, some people aren't going to accept my leadership or accept how I operate, and I'm okay with that, it becomes a blessing. So rejection happens to everyone. I've got to be comfortable in knowing that no matter what happens, no matter how things go, rejection is going to happen. And as a mother, I have to teach my children that. I have to find ways to teach my children that the world is going to sometimes say no or not like them or not. And it's hard. I have 7-year-olds. So how do you teach that lesson to 7-year-olds? I'll tell you one way you teach it is you model the way. So even if I never teach my children or say specifically, hey, sweetie, hey, Shelby, hey, Sydney, this is what rejection is. If they see that mommy hears a no or mommy has a door closed, but they see me get up every day and continue to fight in that area and go back into the workplace or go back to find a relationship or go back to building this whatever I'm trying to do, building my business. If they see that, then they see me modeling something that they can pick up. Because I'll be honest with you, if I'm not modeling a positive response to rejection, I'm modeling a negative response to rejection. And our children model what they see. Our employees model what they see. Our teams model what they see. So if I am a manager, a boss, I am a supervisor, a mother, a wife, an entrepreneur that does not manage rejection, it's going to be seen. So rejection happens to everyone. So welcome everybody to the fold. We are all people who've been rejected. But here is the most important, number 2, rejection doesn't mean you are rejected. So many times we're always told we have to know our value, we have to know our worth. And people are like, what does that mean? It means recognizing that you have a unique purpose for your life and that whatever it is that you were created to do is only for you. Whether it's leading a team or leading a community, whether it's leading people, you have a unique responsibility. So just because a situation or a circumstance was a no, that, friends, doesn't mean that you are a no, because you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You were created in God's image to present something special. And if you were created in that manner to present something special, then it doesn't matter that a few people or a job or a boss or a significant other doesn't find value in you, because you are truly valuable. And because you're truly valuable, and it's easy to say it doesn't matter what other people think, because we've already acknowledged that, yes, it does matter to some of us. But when it's all said and done, you are great. You are powerful. You have so much to offer. So just because you didn't get that job doesn't mean you won't ever be employed again. Just because that relationship doesn't work out does not mean you're not worthy of love. Just because that business didn't take off like you thought it was does not mean you're not gifted to be an entrepreneur. So we have to remember when we're talking about the different areas that rejection doesn't mean you're rejected. You're an amazing person. You have so much to give. So your value is not tied into the thing that you're looking to accomplish. Your value is not tied to that thing. Your value is tied to whose you are and to what you have to offer the world. So although you were rejected or have the rejection, it doesn't mean that you as a person are rejected. The next one, which is where I am right now in this part of my life, rejection allows realignment. Sometimes when we experience rejection, it is for a lesson and a purpose. So many times we don't want to experience rejection because if we experience rejection and we have to process the hurt and the feelings that come with rejection or the not enough or all of those things, when we find that we're in that space, a lot of times we don't want to walk through the hurt because it's painful. Like, let's validate our feelings. Let's be honest. Being rejected hurts. I don't know anybody who likes to hear no, they're not good enough. We didn't accept you for this job. You didn't get into this school. You didn't accomplish this goal. It took you longer than you wanted to do this particular thing. And nobody likes to hear that. But in order to really, really become the person that you're destined to be, you've got to understand that rejection allows realignment. There's a lesson in the rejection. Part of why I think many of us struggle is because we don't walk through the hurt to get to the lesson. So if I applied for a job or a position at work and I didn't get it, instantly it's easy for me to say, that person didn't like me. Or, I wasn't qualified enough for that job. Or, it's just time for me to leave the company. So rather than say, you know what, not getting that hurt. Not being accepted hurt. Not being appreciated hurt. Really sitting in that feeling of hurt and disappointment allows me to heal that part of the rejection that I experienced. Many of us don't ever stop to heal the rejection that we've experienced. So we go into different relationships or different circumstances, different jobs, expecting something different. But because the wound of rejection is still so big, any situation that comes our way that resembles rejection, we put it in the rejection box. And Vanessa, yes, it does hurt, but you have to turn it into a positive. You absolutely do. Let me tell you, rejection is a big hole that many of us have in our situation. And rejection can be from trauma. It can be from experiences. There are a ton of reasons why we experience rejection. But when we don't heal from that space and we don't choose to really put that back in its place, everything we do, we can make it a rejection thought. So I had someone a couple of people yesterday who wanted to talk about coaching. A couple of people. Had one lady in particular who said, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it to our call. So instantly I started to say to myself, okay, maybe she just doesn't want me anymore as a coach. Maybe our conversation just a little while ago when we first started talking about it, maybe I didn't sell it good enough. And these are real thoughts in my head. So I'm being very honest. It was, well, maybe I didn't give enough to her to show her why I think we would be a good fit. And so I started having all of these conversations with myself instead of just saying, hey, Joy, maybe it's just not the right time for her. Hey, Joy, maybe she's not the right fit for you. Hey, Joy, for every door that closes, another one will open. So it's all about learning the lesson. So I sat and acknowledged, man, wow, I really thought that was going to work. And then I dealt with that and said, okay, Joy, but for all of the thoughts that you're having in your head, you have the ability to learn. So evaluate, what did you do? How could you have improved? And if you say, you know what, I did the best I could, then you can pat yourself on the back and know that you've done the work you can do. But if I don't heal those rejection wounds, then when somebody says no to me or somebody chooses something different or I don't get what I want or what I expected, I immediately wallow in the pity of doom, the pity of depression. And if you don't deal with rejection and deal with those issues and those scars, it can really turn into depression. It can really turn into anxiety. It can really turn into just fear in general. So now you're paralyzed to the degree that you can't make any moves. So you got to remember that even though there's rejection, there's an opportunity for realignment. There are some people who are walking out of your life right now who need to go. So realign yourself. It's okay that they're leaving. It's okay that they're gone. There is a job that you're sitting on right now that you don't enjoy. It's okay to realign yourself. It's okay to look and say, what can I do differently so that I find the joy and the peace? And then the last thing that rejection does is without rejection, there is no reward. Speaking of joy is a better company because people have told me no. Joy is a better person because people have told me no. Joy is a better person because I wasn't for everybody. And I'll be honest with you, that was a hard lesson to learn. But as I have grown and matured in myself and who I am and what I have to offer this world, I am so grateful that I wasn't for everybody. I'm so grateful that speaking of joy is not for everybody, because the people who I am in relationship with, the companies that I'm in relationship with, the situations that I find myself in are a blessing for me because they are exactly where I'm supposed to be. They are exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So without the rejection, there's no reward. Listen, that's the way I say it. Okay, if I could lose weight without working out, I would be super fine right now. But in order to have the body that I think I want, I've got to work out. I've got to do the work. I've got to have the good days in the gym. I've got to have the days in the gym where my muscles are crying out so much because it's a development process. So rejection is nothing more than a development process. If every door opened for you, you would never have faith. If every opportunity fell in your lap, you would never see God for who he is as the person that can do exceeding abundantly above all you could ask or think. So there has to be some no's so that you can appreciate the yeses. There have to be some opportunities that things don't work out for you so that you can rejoice when they do. So people leaving jobs, losing your job, losing your home, finding yourself in situations where you're like, this hurts and I've been rejected. Stop and say, but you know what? That means I'm one step closer to the reward. That means I'm one step closer to where I'm supposed to be, one step closer to doing what I'm supposed to do. And God is opening doors for me that only he can open. So even though I'm rejected, there is a reward for that rejection. And all I have to do is keep walking. But here's the truth. If I stay in the rejected space, I never get to the reward. If you're running a race right now, if you're running, just say we're running. And if I stop right now, stop running because my legs hurt, I'm tired, I need some water, I'm about to pass out, whatever the reasons are. If I stop, I never finish the race. So what I'm telling you and what I'm encouraging you to do is to understand how rejection works. Rejection is not to stop you. It's really to motivate you. It's not to bind you, but it's to free you. It's not to hold you, but it's to release you. So although you experience rejection, I want you to know that on the other side of the rejection is the reward. It's just how you view the moment that you're rejected. And you get to choose that. So today, for the rest of the day, you may get a no today. You may see a situation happen today that may really, really affect you, but you have the power right now today to choose how you respond to rejection. Listen, I hope that has helped you and blessed you. Let me tell you, I've been dealing with this. I've been working through it. I ask myself, I have a good friend, a best friend of mine who asks me this question quite often about rejection, and we talk through it. So I just wanted to share with you my experience and to encourage you that although you may experience rejection, that doesn't have to be the end. So I thank you so very much for joining the Leadership Lunch Break. If you have not heard the announcement, listen, the Leadership Lunch Break is a podcast. That's right. It is a podcast. And I am so excited to share with you the Leadership Lunch Break podcast because it has really been something that's near and dear to my heart, an opportunity to share with you what I'm experiencing and what I'm going through. existing guests, it's new guests, it's new conversations. So I invite you to make sure that you have downloaded or you're listening to your favorite podcast and you find the Leadership Lunch Break podcast. It's going to launch every other Tuesday. So the 20th, which was just a few days ago, was the very first Leadership Lunch Break podcast. And I talked about leaving a legacy. So I want to thank you all so very much for joining the Leadership Lunch Break today. Share this with someone, like it, do something, because I guarantee you. Thank you so much, Brittany. She said, I love a good podcast. Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you, Vanessa, for saying it's so good. I really appreciate that. But I want you to share this with someone. If you know someone who's struggling with rejection, if you know someone who's been challenged in the area of rejection, if you know someone who's feeling rejected right now, this message I hope will encourage them. And you always know how to reach me. I would love your feedback about this. And if you're someone who needs coaching or guidance, or even just someone to cheer you on as we walk through this valley together, I am here for you. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Speaking of Joy, and I will see you. Actually, announcement, next week will not be a Leadership Lunch Break. You know why? I'm going on vacation. And so I have decided for the first time in a very long time to truly unplug and to step away and to spend time with my family. So next week will not be a Leadership Lunch Break, but then the week after that, I've got some great stuff for you. So have a wonderful Thursday. Be blessed until we meet again. Thank you so very much and have a good day.
Thank you for joining the Leadership Lunch Break. Join us next Thursday at noon Central Standard Time for lunch as we continue our discussions. Follow Speaking of Joy on all social media platforms or visit our website at www.speakingofjoy.com. That's www.speakingofjoye.com. Until next week.